Welcome to the 14th episode of the world's proven conspiracies in history, the assassination of Emperor Caligula in 41 CE. You must first strip away the cartoonish image of the madman who appointed his horse as a consul.
By January of 41 CE, the Roman Empire was vibrating with a silent, frantic terror. The Senate had been reduced to a chorus of sycophants who kissed the emperor's feet while he slept with their wives.
The treasury, once overflowing with the savings of Tiberius, had been drained on golden bridges across the Bay of Naples and ships made of cedar and jewels.
Caligula, or Gaius as he was known, had declared himself a living god, dressing up as Jupiter, Venus, and Neptune, demanding sacrifices and turning the Palatine Palace into a theater of cruelty, where a bad review meant death.
But the danger to Caligula did not come from the oppressed masses or the humiliated aristocrats. It came from the very men he trusted to watch his back, the Praetorian Guard, specifically a tribune whose personal dignity had been shredded.
At the center was Caligula, tall, pale, balding, and hairy, a man who practiced grimacing in the mirror to terrify his subjects.
He was surrounded by a court of nervous enablers, including his uncle Claudius, a stammering scholar whom the court treated as the family idiot, and his wife Milonia Cisonia, a woman of average beauty but absolute loyalty.
Opposing him was the soul of the conspiracy, Cassius Chaerea. Chaerea was a relic of a harder time, a veteran tribune of the Praetorian Guard who had served on the German frontier. Every day, when Chaerea came to ask for the watchword, Caligula would give him words like Venus, implying he was a eunuch, or Priapus, mocking him as a pervert. He would make obscene hand gestures at the old soldier in front of the troops. It was this relentless, schoolyard bullying of a man who killed for a living that forged the dagger that would end the regime.
I am Czar, educating the common man about famous conspiracies of our history. If you like my content, kindly like, subscribe, and comment.
The date was the 24th of January, 41 CE, the final day of the Palatine Games held in honor of the divine Augustus. The time was just past noon, the 7th hour, when the sun was high. The victims were not just the emperor, but his entire immediate bloodline. The conspiracy intended to wipe the slate clean. Caligula was the primary target, but his wife Cisonia and his infant daughter, Julia Drusilla, were also marked for death. The plot was not funded by foreign gold or bribed mercenaries. It was a conspiracy of conscience and survival, self-funded by men who knew they were already dead if they did nothing.
The coalition was broad and dangerous. It included powerful senators like Annius Vinicianus, who wanted to restore the Republic, and the two Praetorian prefects themselves who looked the other way.
But the hands that held the knives were the tribunes, Chaerea, Cornelius Sabinus, and Julius Lupus. The motive was a complex layering of personal vengeance and political idealism. For Chaerea, it was about restoring his dignitas. He could not bear one more day of Venus. For the senators involved, it was about libertas. They truly believed that if they killed the tyrant, the Republic of Cicero and Cato would magically reassemble itself from the ashes. They were driven by the memory of the Ides of March. The execution of the conspiracy was chaotic, claustrophobic, and brutally effective. The plan relied on the emperor's movements within the sprawling palace complex on the Palatine Hill. On the morning of the 24th, Caligula was hungover and suffering from an upset stomach from a heavy banquet the night before. He hesitated to get up for the midday break. The conspirators were in a panic. If he stayed in the theater, surrounded by the German bodyguard, massive, loyal barbarians who cared only for the emperor and hated the Romans, they could never get close enough. Finally, Vinicianus or another courtier whispered to Caligula that a bath and a light meal would make him feel better. Caligula agreed. He stood up and signaled for his entourage to move. Instead of taking the main route, Caligula decided to take a shortcut through the Cryptoporticus, a covered, semi-underground corridor that connected the palaces. It was a narrow, dim tunnel, the perfect kill box. As he walked, he stopped to chat with a group of noble youths from Asia who were practicing a Trojan war dance. This delay separated him slightly from his German bodyguards, who marched ahead to clear the way. Chaerea saw his moment. He approached the emperor as if to ask for the daily password. Caligula, true to form to the very end, sneered and gave a mocking reply. Perhaps Jupiter, invoking his own godhood. Chaerea shouted, "Aciperatum," receive what is owed, or take this, and struck him in the neck, between the shoulder and the jaw. The blow was not fatal, but it stunned the emperor.
Caligula groaned. "I am still alive." This was a mistake.
The other conspirators, Sabinus and the rest, swarmed him. They did not stab him once. They hacked him with 30 wounds, shouting, "Strike again," until his body was a ruin on the mosaic floor.
The outcome of the actual assassination was a success, but the perfect execution quickly turned into a bloodbath. The German bodyguards, hearing the commotion, turned back. Realizing their master was dead, they went berserk. They stormed into the tunnel and began killing anyone they saw: conspirators, innocent senators, bystanders.
The conspirators fled in terror, scattering into the rabbit warren of the palace. Meanwhile, Julius Lupus, a tribune assigned the grim task of finishing the job, went to the palace bedrooms. He found Caesonia weeping over the body of her husband. Legend says she told the assassin, "I told him not to trust you." Lupus killed her. Then, in a moment that shocked even the hardened Romans, he took the infant Drusilla and smashed her head against a wall. The line of Caligula was extinct. This event is so important in history because it marks the moment the Roman Empire stopped being a hereditary monarchy and became a military dictatorship. For a few brief hours after the murder, the Senate met in the Temple of Jupiter. They were euphoric. They debated erasing the name of the Caesars and restoring the free republic. They spoke of liberty and ancient virtue. But while they were making speeches, the Praetorian Guard was making a king. The soldiers were looting the palace in the confusion. One soldier, wandering through the imperial apartments, saw a pair of feet sticking out from behind a curtain. He pulled the fabric back and found Claudius, the emperor's uncle, trembling with fear. Claudius expected to be killed. Instead, the soldier recognized him as a member of the Germanicus family and spontaneously hailed him as emperor. This was the geopolitical and political earthquake that changed the world. The Senate had the law, but the Guard had the swords. The Praetorians realized that if the Republic was restored, there would be no more emperor. And if there was no emperor, there was no need for an elite imperial guard. Their jobs, their bonuses, and their power depended on the existence of a princeps. They carried Claudius to their camp, the Castra Praetoria, and declared him the ruler of the Roman world. The Senate, with no army to back them up, was forced to bow. The assassination of 41 CE proved that the true power in Rome was no longer the Senate or the people, but the barracks. The fate of the witnesses and the conspirators was a lesson in the hypocrisy of power. Claudius, despite being the beneficiary of the plot, could not let the murder of an emperor go unpunished. It set a bad precedent. If he rewarded Chaerea, then someone might kill him next. So, in one of his first acts as emperor, Claudius ordered the execution of Cassius Chaerea and Julius Lupus. Chaerea met his death with the stoicism of an old soldier, asking to be killed with the same sword he had used to Caligula, though accounts vary on whether this request was granted. He died a republican martyr, executed by the monarch he had accidentally created. The other conspirators, like Sabinus, were pardoned, but committed suicide out of honor or fear. The changes that occurred after the assassination were profound. Rome did not become a republic. Instead, it became a bureaucracy. Claudius, far from being an idiot, was a capable administrator who centralized power, expanded the empire into Britain, and professionalized the civil service. But the shadow of the Praetorian Guard never left. From 41 CE onward, every emperor knew that he served at the pleasure of his bodyguards. The Donative,
The cash bonus paid to the guard upon accession became the real constitution of Rome. What are the physical facts today that make this story undeniable? The primary evidence lies under the soil of the Palatine Hill. Archaeologists have excavated the cryptoporticus of Nero, which incorporated the earlier Neronian and Caligulan structures. You can walk through these underground corridors today. The cool, damp air and the narrow walls allow you to visualize exactly how the ambush took place, the limited sight lines, the echo of footsteps, the impossibility of escape. It is a physical space that demands a conspiracy. It is too narrow for a battle and perfect for a murder. We also have the coins. There is a famous gold aureus minted in the early years of Claudius's reign that depicts the Praetorian camp with the inscription Imper Vicept, the emperor received. It shows the walls of the camp and a soldier standing guard. It is a brazen admission by the state that the emperor was received and essentially made by the army, acknowledging the coup that put him in power.
It is one of the most honest coins ever minted by the Roman state.
Finally, we have the literary evidence. Suetonius and Josephus provide incredibly detailed accounts of the assassination. Josephus, in particular, writing for a Jewish audience, was fascinated by the death of Caligula, because Caligula had threatened to place a statue of himself in the temple in Jerusalem. For Josephus, the assassination was a divine intervention, a miracle that saved the Jewish people from a war of extermination. His account is likely based on eyewitness testimony from contemporaries, and it captures the minute-by-minute confusion of that afternoon in the tunnel. The Praetorian plot against Caligula was a turning point where the mask of the Principate slipped. It revealed that the emperor was just a man who could bleed, and that the empire was just a prize to be seized by whoever had the strongest grip. It began in the schoolyard bullying of an old soldier, and ended with the death of a god, proving that in Rome, dignitas was worth more than life, and that a joke, if told to the wrong man, could bring down an empire. I hope you have enjoyed my content as we explore the world's most bizarre and hidden conspiracies.
Your love by liking, sharing, and subscribing means a lot to me, and your comments are always welcome. See you in the next episode of the World of Conspiracies. Thanks for watching.